and welcome back, everyone. I hope you all had a chance in the short break to stretch your legs. And for those of you joining us again online, a very big thank you. Just point the microphones a little bit more towards me. So we're now moving into our question and answer session, and I'm delighted to be here with representatives from across our panel. So I'm going to start by asking you all to briefly introduce yourselves and your roles. Neil.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Neil Ward. I'm head teacher of Amwell View, which is a large special school at the east side of the county.
Hi, I'm Dom Harvey. I'm one of the experts by experience, so I use my lived experience with disability to advise the council.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Sarah Hennington. I'm the Director for Children and Young People for Hertfordshire and morning, everyone. You really met me. I'm here to say inclusion skills in children's services, Hertfordshire County Council.
Good morning, everybody. Sandy Fitzpatrick, Director of Education for Hertfordshire County Council, and a fairly recent head teacher at secondary school. So I've been in my new role for just over a year, and previous to that, I was a secondary school head teacher for many years in Hertfordshire.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Andy Lawrence. I'm head of Hertfordshire's North 25 social care teams for disabled children and parents.
Morning, everyone. My name is Kate Hudson, and I am part of Neurodevelopment with Karen for Hertfordshire today. So we represent the views of 70 families in Hertfordshire, and also on to two disabled families.
Thank you, Kate, and thank you, panel. So we're going to be covering a range of questions, some of which have been submitted as part of our pre-summit listening events, and some of which have been coming through live via our forms link. And if anyone wants to pose a question now or during the session, please do ask a panel by using the QR code that you can see behind us. So we're going to start with some of the most frequently asked questions that came from some of our pre-summit listening, just to give you a chance to get your questions going too. So thank you very much, Kezia. And just a reminder, we've got about 50 minutes for this session. So I won't be asking every panel member to answer each question because we simply won't get through all the questions. So I'm just going to try and select who I think is probably best placed to answer the questions. So the first question: why are education, health and care plans taking so long to process, and what is being done to improve timeliness? Hero, I'm going to start with you.
We have investment in such centres about earlier. I've seen a reference to Development Centre Academy. We've actually
I can't hear Hero.
You can't hear Hero. Thanks. Was that somebody online saying that?
It's
Crikey, I thought it was because I moved. Thank you. So, Hero. No, interpreters online. I'm not quite. Thank you for the feedback. We're going to try again.
Can you hear me?
Right, let's give it a go, Hero. If you lean right into your mic, and we're just getting someone to check the technology. Yeah.
So yeah, we have invested in our statutory spend delivery across a range of services, so within my directorate, Tony's directorate, and Randy's directorate as well, to really enhance that matrix availability. So what that means is different teams are responsible for the activities according to age and stage the child is at. And that's been really, really productive. It's been against the backdrop of that 27% rise we said we had last year, so we absolutely recognise that we started this year with a number of HCPs out of timescale. However, I'm pleased to report today that we're actually in a place where less than 20 HCPs are currently outside of timescale, and there were 700 in January. So we issued around 1,500 HCPs between January and June. So the short of it is, we've invested in our educational psychologists, we've invested in our statutory spend delivery, and we've seen those improvements despite the backdrop of the 27% rise where we did see a dip sort of at the start of that year. So recognising that those experiences weren't where we needed to be. Alongside that, we've looked at quality, because it is about timeliness, but it's about quality, and we've seen those improvements in quality go up. I think this is the feedback that we're most pleased with is that we've seen a 68% satisfaction rate with new families going through the process over the last quarter, and that's the highest we've ever seen. It doesn't mean those 2%, I mean, they're different or not satisfied, and we need to work on that and continue to focus on that. But we're seeing improvements in this area. I think it's absolutely a top priority for us.
Thank you very much, Hero. Right, I've got a second question, and this one's, I'm going to start with Tony, but Neil might want to chip in too. How will mainstream schools be supported to better support SEND needs?
It's a really good question, because I've been around in the first year of my role. I visited a lot of different schools. In fact, I visited over 60 schools last year. And what I see going around those schools is that you see some amazing provisions and amazing support for children with SEND, but not necessarily those schools know exactly how to do that. I think all schools would have a will to support children in mainstream, and certainly I'm looking forward to the school's white paper, which I'm hoping will have some mechanisms which will enable mainstream schools to support children. But our role in the local authority is to make sure that we can enable that. And what I mean by that is that we need to make sure that our services and our support teams within the local authority are helping schools to meet the needs of children that are going to their schools. I've had a long held belief that the best place for a child, for most children, not for all children, but for most children, is a mainstream school, their local school, as Dame Christine said, with their brothers and sisters being able to get to school easily. And our job in the local authority is to use the resources that we've got to support schools with that one next. In other words, how do you go about doing that? Because in my experience of being a head teacher in Hertfordshire, I've never come across a head teacher that doesn't want to meet the needs of children. It's just understanding how you can do that. So our job, our next job, is to make sure that we use our support services and our specialist services to support as many schools as possible and as many children as possible in their mainstream provisions.
Thank you, Tony. And Neil, did you want to?
Yeah, just to echo what Tony's saying. So I think a lot of the work that we're looking to do is for all schools to understand our ordinary available offer, but also our graduated offer, to make sure services aren't being duplicated, but also the emphasis on schools, specialist schools, supporting mainstream schools, having that in-reach, outreach ability to phone up, email their local special school to ask for advice, to walk alongside our mainstream colleagues, because I think that's really important, really powerful. So what we've seen so far is more and more schools reaching out, and that's what we need to do a bit more of that work across the county.
Thank you. Now the next question is a great question, Dom. It's going to be a question for you. So Hertfordshire, we talk about how central children and young people are to all of our decisions. Can you talk a bit about how we are ensuring this happens?
Yeah, so I think there's the day-to-day, quote unquote, I don't work every day, way in which that happens, where, so I think it said earlier, I'm in a team of 8 on the Experts by Experience. It was 4, but it was so successful that we doubled it.
Yeah.
And so we've got kind of a better sort of breadth of experiences there. And then, but I'm just one of 8, and 8 of however many more children there are. And so we also liaise with the other parts of the Voice of Hertfordshire, like the youth councils and the ICBs and things like that. And so that's a way that we try, and the work that we do as the experts, we try to keep the children central to it. But I think possibly more importantly is that historically speaking, children's voices are deprioritized, so disabled people's, and so there's this compounding effect of disabled children not being listened to, and that's a systemic issue, because if the whole of Herts County Council was being run by disabled children, there would still be all these problems that you don't face. And so if there was an easy way to solve that and centre the children's needs in that, then, well, if there was a silver bullet for something like that, I think we'd have a lot less problems everywhere. But I think a very important thing, other than the work that we do, is that the people like Hero and Sarah that we work with, they are very willing to be told what to do, basically. I started the job and I went in guns blazing because I thought there'd be loads of resistance, and then I didn't get any resistance. And then I was like, oh, stop patronising me. You can disagree with me. Just because I'm saying it it doesn't mean you have to, counter everything I say. And then I realised they weren't doing that. These are people who just have a belief in what we're doing and listening to us. And I think that's the first step to a systemic change that will get young people's voices included, rather than just making us do things like this. So yeah, I think that's what it is. We do day-to-day work, but I think the top level are now philosophically and culturally minded towards doing that, which will have, I hope, bear fruits better than any of the work we do.
John, thank you. That's a great answer, and thanks to you and the other experts by experience, some of whom are in the room today. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next question, which is about communication. So, Kate, I'm going to come to you. Communication is a common theme. Quite rightly, I get lots of emails from lots of parents and young people talking to me about communication. It's something that we're really focused on. So, Kate, the question is, what is being done to improve this, and how are we listening to the views of families?
In terms of what's being done, so HPCI has been working as part of the SPEND Academy to actually train frontline members of staff and talk to them about what it's actually like to be the receiving end of those services, the kind of journey that we're on, and why it's so important to get that communication right. Not because it's a nice thing for the parents, even though it is, but actually getting that communication right means you're much more likely to get the right outcomes agreed for the children and young people, and that's what we're all trying to do. We've also worked alongside local authority partners to develop something called the ACT guidance, which is about information being accurate, compassionate and timely. When we came up with it, it was almost called the CAT guidance, which my child told me it should have been called, but we went with ACT in the end. But we really want to try and make sure that everybody is working in that way. It's a massive challenge because the front line in Hertfordshire is huge, and it's really difficult, as Christine said, that everybody, that as a parent you go to a GP, you go to, your health visitor, you go to somebody at school and say, how is this working? And because there are so many people on the front line, it's really difficult sometimes to get pointed in the right direction. But if we can get everybody communicating, we think it's just going to really be incredibly valuable. And that's why we welcome events like this. It's been fantastic to see so many families being able to be listened to through the survey, through the events. But, as been said so many times today, it's not just about listening, it's now about being able to come together, not just listen, engage, let's get some proper actions, let's get everybody sort of pulling in the right direction, because we've got to do that. And we just got to really focus on kind of getting those basics right with communication, that we're actually replying to emails, picking up the phone, doing what we said we would, getting the child's name right in correspondence, just those little bits that make such a big difference to the family who are on the receiving end. So I think there is definitely work that's happened, but we know there's more to be done.
Thank you, Kate. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Listen and deliver is what I've heard you say. That's really helpful. Thank you. The next question, Sarah. There's a question for Sarah from the ICB. So what is being done to help children access ADHD and autism assessments?
Children across Hertfordshire, but some of those are both, so it's not 7,000 individual children, just to make that clear. So some have both assessments. So what the ICB have done is we have invested into the neurodevelopment services for the last 3 years. This year we have invested £4 million, and next year it will be currently £5.5 million into community paediatric services. So some of that will go into neuro assessments. However, some obviously, because it's community paediatrics, it is a lot more than ASD and ADHD assessments as well within those contracts. So we do face significant pressures across our health services for things like special school nursing, epilepsy, asthma, diabetes. So we do have to apportion money for our providers well as they see fit and in line with what we require. So we have also invested in the Neurodevelopment Support Hub as well for Hertfordshire. And we've also got lots of other things that we've invested in as well, probably too many to name here on just because of the time. And so we are aware that obviously assessments can be a lengthy wait, and we are looking at ways in which we can support families better. And whilst they're waiting for the assessment, so that they're aware of where the information is, and working along with schools as well. So that's where we are for your phone.
Thank you, Sarah. I failed to guess another question. Thank you very much. The next question is, what is being done to hold the council to account for its legal obligations? Hira, do you want to start with that? And I can always chip into.
A bit about the inspection that took place and the specific improvement areas set as a result of that inspection around legal duties and sort of eliminating the need of parents, working towards eliminating the need of parents to escalate via legal routes. We recognise that's not the territory anybody goes down lightly, and it's not something that we want to be sort of engaging in as regularly as we have been in the past and today. So that's one mechanism, and as a result of that improvement area, we fed that into our overall governance. So you heard Christine talk about sort of the board that was enhanced and set up that she chairs. Underneath that is a partnership, there's an operational group that kind of looks at those core actions around that. And one of those improvement areas has its own work stream in terms of delivering against some of those. So we're sort of tracking that as a partnership and measuring our progress against that. And we report that on a public basis, on a quarterly basis, into our Education Centre and Inclusion House. So those matters are the public record. And then, of course, there is the option of legal action that is taken, at times by families to be able to say, actually, if they're not happy with this, and we take it to that level. What we really try to work on is where decisions may not be what we would like them to be, or actually there's a disagreement, a dispute around that. Can we have a conversation? Can we communicate around that? So done a lot of work with Sendias to kind of make sure that advice and guidance is being given to families so they know personally their rights, but also those opportunities for engaging at that level to prevent that escalation into that next territory, and other partners. Every school has a legal echo now, EHC coordinators, they can liaise with that EHC coordinator, and also feed some of that information to the families and have some of those more informal meetings. We're also looking at how we can enhance mediation as well, so that then we can really resolve some of those areas as quickly as possible. There should be issues sometimes, and sometimes the reasons that we've not, perhaps it seems on the surface, haven't met those duties is can be down to things like the volume of issues that we're sort of experiencing at one time. And particularly was noted the focus around provision. So there's a real feeling obviously out there, and understandably, that actually the provision isn't right. And so we need to do something at a much more, I've heard systemic a few times, but I'm going to use it again, a systemic level to really address that quality of provision, both within the mainstream and specialist knowledge quality, of course, access to that provision as well. So it's looking at some of those things, trying to address them, but also communicating what the reasons are for when perhaps that doesn't seem to be the right decision, and enabling opportunities, I think, for the earliest resolutions. But we know we're not there yet. We absolutely know that this is a real priority for us to do this better. and to reflect, which of course in the national context in terms of what we see across the country, being able to do this.
Thank you, Hero. I think it's a great question, and I think accountability is a really important theme, and I think you're absolutely right. We've got all these external mechanisms for holding the council and indeed the ICB to account through inspections, etc. But what's really important, I think, is how we hold ourselves to account as well, and that's our governance structure, our partnership governance structure, how we listen to parents, HPCI, and more widely, Dom and other young people, how we enable you to hold us to account. So there's been a real sort of culture shift, as well as the sort of structures around this, around accountability, that I think is really important, and something that has helped drive the change. So thank you. Right, next question is, what can my child do to meet their peers? We want more inclusive activities. Okay, so this is, yeah, what can we do to really make sure that, you know, young people are getting opportunities to make friends, meet their peers, get out and do stuff? I know it's something that people feel really strongly about. Andy, can I ask you to lead with that one, please?
Designing some new public information that shares with families of children and young people the eligibility criteria and supports available across the local area. We, as well as producing that information which is available online and then we copies out Friday at lunchtime for those of you in the halls, we also developed an online activities directory where we've identified, I think it's 386 local organisations that provide spaces where young people can come together, they can meet, they can socialise and undertake. It might be something, a drama class, music, through to something multicultural, but essentially trying to really personalise the experience of individuals and their friends. So we've got the activities directory, we've got a really clear graduated offer of care and support for disabled children and young people. And we've also now providing care and support to around 2,500 disabled children and young adults in that 0 to 25 space. Those are the children and young adults that need care supports and other facilitation to access the community. We've also got the Hard Send card. Hard Send card offers families and young people with SEND the opportunity to access a range of different social and leisure experiences across the county, different counties in settings, things like that. So again, think about always how do we create positive experience, positive, and again, improve life chances of young disabled people. I'd also like to mention some of our services for young people. I think it's every week of term time, we've got 13 of our young people offering a weekly SEND activity for around 10 to 12 young people come together across different areas. Services for young people also lead a 4 Edinburgh schemes for or certainly include young people with SEND. And we've also got a youth council in every district, which again is important that we achieve steady inclusion and representation in our services for young people. I think finally to say that there's absolutely more to do in this space. This question, Joe, was put to me by a learner who SEND when I was a learner who SEND out of Lonsdale last term. And so between my service and services for young people and the young people at that setting, we're building a bit of a picture of how he could meet his friends in the local community, overcoming some of the experience he faces in accessing resources. So of course more to do, but we've come a long way.
Thank you, Andy.
Oh, it sounds not great online.
Okay, Tammy, the sound isn't great online and I need to use the mic.
No, you're fine.
Okay.
It needs to go on the table.
Ah, we'll pass it along. Okay, well, the next question, I think I'm going to start with Hero and then come to Neil, if you can give it to. Thank you, and apologies to those listening online. I hope you have managed to hear some of what's been said. We are recording it, so if you've missed stuff, you will get an opportunity to hear the answers. And hopefully this will fix it. So the next question, I think this is a really important question. I'm glad this one's been asked because it's what was asked of me when I went to some of the listening events. It seemed to be one of the top questions. So why is there limited access to specialist placements for our children and young people in Hertfordshire? Hero, can you start? But Neil, I'm going to come to you as well. Thank you.
Thank you for as we accepted this come up today, we absolutely know that this is a huge priority for our families around access to the right provision and at the right time, so without the delay that we've seen currently and in the past for many children and people. In terms of why, so I think what we've done over the last 2 years is really stepped up the available provision, but both in mainstream in terms of access to those specialist resource provisions, but also we've expanded every single special school that we have in Hertfordshire over the last 4 years actually. And over the last 3 years, we've really seen that but we recognise that that's still not enough, and that's the question that we need to get into with all of you today, in terms of how do we ensure that we do have specialists available for those children that really need it, and how do we ensure that actually mainstream schools, as Tony was talking about, are enabled to support that wider range of children that we're seeing coming through, because we are seeing those wider range of children with additional needs coming through. And so there is a need, therefore, to do some of those things differently. But I think it's important to say that in the development of that next plan that we need to do together, there's absolutely a place for specialist placements for those children that really need them. And that we've done all we can really to really expand everything that we have. Not all that we can, there's always more to do. We've done so much in the last 2 years, opened twice as many in the last 2 years compared to the previous 4 and so on. And yet it's still not enough. So that mechanism of continuing to respond in this way, it is not going to achieve our end goal. So how can we make sure we have specialist placements at the right time for children that really need it? And how can we support our mainstream schools and our alternative provision and other available provision to meet other children's needs as well as getting that dual balance really. I don't know, Neil wants to add anything at the same time.
Yeah, I think just sheer unprecedented numbers of children and the level of need of the young people that we provide education for. We've all had to adjust, I think is the best way to say it. Every aspect of education, we've had to look at our provision differently, and that doesn't happen overnight. So certainly for specialist schools, we're having to think outside the box. So I think you've probably heard about satellites and about additional provision being funded and built by the local authority. But again, all of that takes time. So it's about us all adjusting our approach. Absolutely making sure our specialists have a full capacity and then thinking outside the box about how we can increase capacity, which we've done in abundance. That's still happening. The number will still address the need of more children in terms of numbers, but then it's that adjustment to mainstream as well, as Hero said. So how we will walk together and look at the provision that we offer differently, I think is fair to say.
Thank you. If you just keep the mic. There is a follow-up question actually associated with that. So I'm going to read it out. You've touched on some of this stuff, but you might want to just pick up on a couple of the points. So what are we doing about the children who fall through the gaps? So those for whom mainstream is or will be a challenge and who won't meet the thresholds for specialist. So these are the young people who fall through the gaps, who might be out of education, might be attending sometimes on a part-time timetable. Hero, would you like to pick that up?
So I think briefly about the different model we've got about supporting our most complex children in the house. So having those nuanced teams according to the age and stage that the child is at. And our children who are out of education, as part of that, are now supported by our virtual school. Our virtual school, for those of you that don't know, are responsible to advocate for our children looked after in terms of their outcomes, which includes how they attend school, but also things like their attendance and their ability to access particular provision, whether that be mainstream or specialist. So we deliberately moved our children's education into the virtual school to provide a more enhanced offer, including as you have sort of the HDPs too, so that we can really focus on supporting them and enabling them that right service to be able to return to school. And you made reference to services to young people and they work they do outside of school hours. They do a lot of work inside school hours as well. And their focus is on most vulnerable children who are either out of school or who are attending on a part-time timetable. But we absolutely know that there is more to do. These numbers have increased.
Mic just went off.
These numbers have increased so significantly over the last few years. And we've done a lot to kind of focus on them, particularly in the last 12 months, but there is definitely more to do. And that phrase, you know, those children who fall through the gaps, make no mistake, we now know who those children are. As Christine said, we absolutely do. And we have our focus on them, but we haven't been able to return them all to where they need to be immediately. We're absolutely on that journey to progress that further and trying to work with many families and many schools who have been really open, actually, particularly school colleagues over the last 6 months, to thinking about how we can do things differently, creatively, and having carrier skills as well. But we're on the journey with that. We absolutely know the children now, but we now need to make sure that we're working together to get those children into the provision that they need to be able to access, but also the families following that position as well.
Thank you, Hero. So the next question, I'm gonna ask a few of you to reply to this one. So we hear a lot about the workforce challenges for health, schools, and the council. For example, education psychologists. What are you doing about it? Sarah, can I ask you just to talk first of all from a health perspective about some of the challenges around key workforce and what we're doing about it? Thank you.
Thank you. So all of our providers, all of our NHS providers have their own workforce development plans, and we're working regionally as well with NHS England, because, you know, nationally we're facing the same challenges, the same sort of areas of work, like trying to attract nursing staffing, speech and language therapists, particularly, you know, OTs as well. So all of our providers are working jointly together or well, actually, they are working jointly together as a regional workforce plan. As you know, some of the changes as well with our current ICB structure will mean that workforce will go to a more sort of regional and national level. I think all of our providers have got vacancies, they definitely have all the vacancies to be. That we're trying, you know, we're doing our very best to make Hertfordshire an attractive place to work. Obviously, we do lose some staff over to London, so we get London waiting, say, for example. So we're looking at ways in which we can increase our staffing levels here in Hertfordshire, make it an attractive place to work and to stay working as well, because once we've got good staffing, we want them to stay. And so that's you know, there's a whole workforce development sort of operational plan that is in progress at the moment. But there is, as we know that university places for nursing this year have fallen, people are just not applying to go into the health field at all. So if anybody is interested, please let me know. So we know that nationally that there is a long way to go for us to make health an attractive place to work. It is a great place to work, honestly. I do really enjoy working in health. I'm not a nurse, so you know, not going to be out involved anytime soon, which will probably be grateful for most of our residents, I'm sure. But it's yeah, there is lots to do to continue to make health an attractive place to work.
Thank you, Sarah, and well done for not missing an opportunity to recruit to the NHS. I'm going to come to Neil and then Tony for schools. So
Oh, yeah, this one works. Okay. So for schools, no different to anyone else, we're really struggling to recruit teachers as a whole, but certainly that the knowledge of SEND, how specialist schools can support mainstream educators to start with. So we're really looking at the training package that we can offer, both as an authority and both as a group of special schools. So that's one aspect we're looking at. Also working with ECT providers and universities to really bring back that understanding of child development, the understanding of diagnosis, that partnership in terms of that initial teacher education, really, really important. I think we lost it on some level for quite a few years. So as people are coming into the profession, they haven't got that grounding of SEND, of inclusion and what inclusion means. So we're starting on the back foot, and we're trying to fill those kind of voids. And mainstream educators really want it. They want the help. They want the support. They want us to be there and walk alongside them. So that journey is definitely happening, and hopefully we'll carry on and pick up some certain momentum.
Thank you. And then, Tony, I don't know if you want to add anything around schools, and then I'll come to Heroes specifically about Ed Sykes, because that was referenced in the question.
Yes, I want to add from my previous experience of being a teacher, that recruitment has become very difficult. The first time I applied for a job, which was about 30 years ago, I was applying to be a design and technology teacher, and I've been getting interviewed, and there's 47 applicants. And I would love to have been in that position as a head teacher, where you advertise and you get 47. We got 4 applicants in those cases. So I think, you know, it is a very difficult landscape in terms of recruiting. What we are doing in terms of a local authority is that we're working with some of our apprenticeship providers. I think what we came to recognise, certainly in the school where I was, and I know that my teacher colleagues moving in the same direction, of growing your own. So actually having people that, I've always said that the most important thing is for a good teacher to be able to build strong relationships with children and families. You can learn subject knowledge, okay? It's really important, because, you know, you want children to get really good qualifications, but at the end of it, if you don't have that personal connection within, you know, when you're teaching, then that's something that you can't actually teach somebody to be able to have. So I always used to start the other way around, and we grow our own teachers, we put them through numbers of qualifications, and I think it's great that now this is teaching apprenticeship, because really that's the way to go. Get people from the local community into your school that like working with children, and then grow the school. We've seen lots of great examples of that. Doesn't make it easy. Funny enough, I heard yesterday on the radio that the government have reduced their into teaching because of the falling birth rate, and that seems to be a bit of a you know, a bit of a salt really to it, because bottom line, we really do good quality people in schools, and we really do need good quality teachers. But any fancy career in teaching, go to a local school, and you can go through this.
You're just going to.
Thank you. Yes, on educational psychology, critical area, you heard me speak earlier about the progress we're making with the HTTP. We wouldn't have been able to do that without investment into the educational psychology service. So, there have been investment into that service for 10 years. And what we saw was a steady decline of educational psychologists leave, and the statutory ask went up because it was just too much for those psychologists to be able to meet. We're faced with similar challenges. Sarah described very limited places for a doctorate to be an educational psychologist. With any education they do with that avenue as well. But it's really challenging actually even to get on. So it's about 95% of applicants that come to the doctorate course. So actually, they don't even want to be educational psychologists. There aren't enough places there to make that, and we're raising that constantly with the DFE. Christine's hearing it again today, but you know, we're always raising that because it's a critical area. So how we've addressed that in Hertfordshire and managed to meet that timescales now for educational psychology advice is 80% of advice relates to meeting and it's by locums, EPs. And They are quality assured. We're making sure that we're checking each of those devices, and we've got our principal education psychologists in the room. I think it's the way. And they absolutely make sure that every single piece of advice is quality assured. But you know, we'd much rather, obviously, encourage our own without you, but we want the education psychologists to kind of work in partnership. So we've developed a work strategy. We've got assistant educational psychologists as part of that. We've got training in educational psychology as part of that. Last week, when we had a video of the most up to date, and we received 5 applications from existing educational psychologists, which the most we've received in we know how long. So we're really pleased with that, but we know there's a long way to go. So we're developing that reputation, we're developing our comms around that. To name it. Just one word I think I should mention, and it was mentioned briefly earlier, is our statutory send staff as well. And part of that recruitment drive 2 years ago, which we want to continue with, so we've seen a bit of a dip off now with graduate recruiters, to mention it today, is really focusing on transferable skills and lived experience. Over 50% of our workforce are parents of children, people with SEND now in that statutory send delivery, and that's really, really important and really valued by us. The academy can provide some of the training that's needed, focusing on job support, but that real intrinsic motivation to do this work comes from people who know a lot of the time, whether that's work experience or personal experience. So we absolutely welcome applications from there. And Neil mentioned the outreach. There was significant investment over the last year into specialty outreach and schools forums, and the commitment across our school partnership into that, as well as speech and language therapy, which is starting to make a real difference. But we've got some national sort of frameworks that we're working in that make that difficult to do consistently.
Thank you, Hero and colleagues. We've got time for a couple more questions, I think. So, Kate, this one's for you. What would you say to parents at the start of their journey who might be terrified about the state of things? It is.
Because when you are at the beginning of your journey, there's so much going on. You're coming to terms with the fact that the path that you had in mind for your child may not be the path that they go down, and your expectations and that of families, etc. It can be really a difficult time, and you know, I don't know about other parents in the room, but I certainly cried in more support groups than we ought to own up to. So it is worrying, but what I would say is that we have an amazing role in the community sector.
Yeah.
They do amazing work to support. There are family groups out there, and talking to other people who have been through or been through is incredibly important, and can be so valuable. And, you know, even if the path your child is going to go on isn't the one that you envisaged, doesn't mean it's not going to be a fantastic path and they're not going to have an opportunity to climb and to achieve. But I think that's why it's really important having conversations like this today, because we're talking a lot about strategic things, and actually behind every one of those is a child or young person and their family who just want to be given the opportunity to thrive. And we've heard about all the fantastic work that goes on about helping families to navigate their way through the service. That needs to continue, because for lots of people it's really difficult, particularly if you have your own additional needs, you don't speak English as the first language, etc. So every person in the system needs to be really thinking about those individual children and what we can do to make sure that those parents that are coming into the system, that are worried about the future for their child, is supported to allow those children to really thrive, because our kids are amazing, but they need to be given that opportunity, that support to really achieve. So I hope I wouldn't depress them too much. But yeah, there's fantastic stuff out there. So, you know, support each other, I think.
Thank you. Well said. And thank you, Kate. And the next question follows on nicely from that. Dom, it's a question for you. My child has SEND, special educational needs and disabilities. What would the expert by experience tell them to make them less worried about their future?
I think, so I was late diagnosed, so I went through all of that with a mostly fully equipped brain. And that was an incredibly stressful experience. But I think the thing to tell them is that no one wants to be born or live during a crisis of any kind, whether it's political or send or whatever. But unfortunately, you are. So the next best thing to do is to do something about it. And I think that's, you may well break before you're reformed, but then from there, you start seeing things that you like. And I think you start seeing these things as a social justice issue rather than a procedural or sort of legislative issue. And then at that point, you sort of feel a bit galvanized, I think. And then, because you want to make the world a better place, well, I hope people do. So I think, yes, it's basically going to be awful and horrible. But then it suddenly won't be in your own head. And then when it stops being like that, hopefully doing something to improve material conditions, like being expert by experience, we're really trying. And then, yeah, I think that's, things are rubbish. So you should try and do something about that, even if you don't want to.
Thank you, Dom. And as you were talking, I was reflecting on what I heard Dame Christine talk about earlier, about a broken SEND system, and actually how do we move from that to a capable system and give people hope and confidence to work with us on that. So thank you for your answer. The next question, what is Hertfordshire doing for post-16 education? So I'm kind of looking at Andy, Tony, Hero. Who would like to lead on that question? Here. What was that? Yeah. Okay, Hero, thank you.
So I'm going into your thoughts on this, because I know a lot is happening in this space, because we recognise across that partnership, and there's a key partnership between us and the leadership of all four colleges across partnership. But more needs to be done, both for the young people that are currently there, and also for more young people that are coming through. So how are we doing that? What are we looking at? So we're looking at the curriculum, which is really important in terms of the courses that are on offer. Are they in their implementing that transition? We know each of our colleges offer different things according to particular specialisms, which in the most part is fine. And actually, if we see those numbers coming up, we need to make sure we've got the right range in the right places. And we know that we don't have that consistently at the moment. With the numbers that are coming up, we need to make sure the expertise and knowledge and skills that are in the right place and to be able to address the needs of the children that come through. We have lots of discussions about that, looking at the data and then projecting that across into what needs to be done, what training needs to be put in place, what needs to be put in place. We've got a really cool partner between our services, young people and our colleges, and it's obviously a range of other post-16 options. It's not just about college, the other options as well, traineeships, supported internships that work with employers and so on. So that partnership is critical as part of work of our preparing for our board as well. And then of course the capacity, and capacity talked about their expertise, but about physical capacity as well. So it's one of the top list things on our agenda when we meet with our DMD colleagues around there isn't that availability for expanding buildings in post-16 or SEND. We've got, well, it's been paused for schools now, but there was access to kind of preschool potential and so on via the DFB, but there isn't that sort of thing, which is really, really difficult. There are a range of young people who need that access to continued enhanced provision that colleges aren't always in a position to be able to offer in the way that they like to and the way that needs to happen. So there's a range of different ways that we're looking at that throughout the FA will feed directly into the SEND partnership. And you can chair that. So I'm going to pass over to you.
Very briefly, very briefly, just to add up, I think to what you were saying, absolutely important priority with a changing demographic, so different types of young people with a real broad range of need coming through. Shameless plug, leading a workshop this afternoon with Peter Hosier and Jonathan Close, to help us in how we design and develop and come to that workshop this afternoon. And finally, I think the most important what we're planning into design and thinking is community partnership, because actually sometimes formal settings aren't the right place for young people to learn and prepare for work. And so absolutely we've got an opportunity in this county to shape new types of approaches and be reaching potentially.
Thank you, Andy. We've got time for the one more question. And before I read it, if your question hasn't been read out, what we are going to be doing is pulling together all the questions that we've had put to us today, and we're going to answer them in a frequently asked questions mode. So you will get your question answered. So the last question is, we've heard lots about good intentions today, but when will we feel the changes? Sarah, would you like to start? I'm going to come to a couple of people on this, but keep it brief. We have about 5 minutes.
I think one of the answers that Christine said earlier on probably covers it. We're trying to get things as good as we can be with an extremely hard financial workforce challenges. Will everybody feel the benefit? Probably not. Can we do what we can with other families? That's what we're trying to do. And we work very hard amongst our health colleagues for that every single day. So I can't say to you by the 1st of April everything's going to be fine. But yeah, just to kind of just reassure people and families that we are working as hard as we can against significant challenges to deliver what we can for the benefit of our children and families in Hertfordshire.
Thank you. And if you just pass the mic to Hero. Hero, could you give any reflections on that, please?
Yes, absolutely. We have to be very hard. Again, keep saying what's absolutely at the beginning. It's getting that balance between haven't felt the difference and the people that have, and actually thinking it's the question that's the case. If you're entering into the system right now, if all you hear is one side of that story, it would be absolutely terrifying. It's going to be terrifying anyway for all the reasons that potentially gain, in terms of that experience, that journey. But actually, we have a duty to provide some hope and some opportunity and some options. Nobody that I work with across the partnership is in it for the wrong reasons. We're really in it for the right reasons. We want to make a difference. We want to make things better, and the commitment there is strong. The more we can kind of reflect on those positive experiences and build more positive opportunity for creating that consistency across for everybody, as well as really learning and being challenged on rights, learning from that, taking that learning forward and making the changes that are necessary. So in terms of when we feel the change, I think for some people they are already feeling that change, for some people they're sort of feeling a little bit in some areas and not in others, and some they're like, actually, this doesn't talk to me, this is what's happening for me. Our aim through all the changes that we're making, the design we're doing something is trying to shift back further towards this sense in the one seeking all that. We need your help to achieve that.
Thank you. And if you could just pass the mic down to Kate. I'm just going to give you the last word, Kate, as our parent rep on this in terms of what you might say to the question around, we've heard lots about good intentions, but when will we feel those changes? Thank you.
Thank you. And I think it's worth reflecting. We talked this morning about, and as a parent, the things we said to you don't know what that means.
Yes.
You don't know what that means for the system, you don't know what that means for the partners. And it's a really scary time. So, I think we sort of have to understand that that's how families are feeling at the moment. What we know change is coming, but what is that going to look like? So it's very difficult, Sarah said, to say. It's difficult change things are going to happen because there's so many variables. But what I would say, if we're doing shameless plugs, is that the Parent Care Forum is there to represent families. So we want to hear about what's working well. So when things are going well, please do tell us so that we can then feed that in and say, this is making a difference, this is going more consistently. But also, if things aren't working well, we're there to try and work with our partners to do the challenge that's been mentioned, to say, parents often don't have the resources to go and sit down and speak on accountable groups, etc. We need to be getting the system right first time so that we aren't having to go down those challenges. So if things aren't going well, please feed into HPCI, because we are there to be that voice and to say, this is what's not working, this is where we need change, but this is where we are seeing change. So hopefully HPCI will be able to feed into that and say, this is how parents are feeling, and we will share that with our members and with partnership. So again, I don't know when, but please do tell us so that we can feed that in as the journey continues.
Thank you, Kate. So that ends our Q&A session. A big thank you to all of you who have put questions to us. And also, of course, a huge thank you to those who've joined on the panel. Now, as we come to the end of the morning sessions and we're going to be ending the live stream and saying goodbye to those who've joined us online, I'd just like to take a couple of moments just to reflect on some of the key messages we've heard today. As Hiro mentioned at the beginning of the day, we've been joined by Julia Bakey, who has been visually capturing the key messages. So I think, Julia, we're going to try and show what you have captured. Is it going to just?
It should be online. I don't know what that is.
Oh gosh!
Sorry,
It's there.
I can't work out how to get on that one.
Gosh, that's fantastic. And we'll all get an opportunity to look at that and to take it in, and we'll be using it as we move forward. So thank you. And Julia, a massive thank you for your incredible work in highlighting the key themes and illustrating some of what we've heard today and our continued commitment to children and young people. And right, you won't be able to read, but it says children and young people at the centre of everything we do. Focus on where you can make the biggest difference. Every person has a role in shaping the future of SEND. So some really great messages there. I can see some of you taking photos. You'll be able to come up close. Aha! Now, well done, whoever did that. There's a clever person with tech. So that's really great and really uplifting. So thank you, Julia. This really powerful representation, both of our shared journey, but also what we're looking forward to achieving. So just in terms of some of the key, I've been scribbling away, some of the key messages that I've heard today. We've made some progress, but we know we've got much more to do, and we know we can't do it alone. Listening to our young people, listening to our parent carers and everybody that we work with has got to be right at the core of it. It's the foundation of meaningful change. Ambition versus reality, I've written down. Acknowledging some of the challenges, Christine and others talked about huge challenges, but we've got to stay focused on what we can do and what we can change and improve. And I'm going to quote Dame Christine again, shifting from the broken towards what we're capable of doing. That shared ownership, all of us in this room and all of you listening have got a role to play to make sure that every child and young person in Hertfordshire really has the best opportunity they have, both to have a brilliant childhood and to grow up and be a cracking adult as they move forward. And most importantly, keeping children and young people at the centre of all we do. So thank you very much. To those of you who've joined us online, a huge thank you for being part of the morning sessions. Please do let us know how you found the morning session via the QR code, which should be on the screen behind me. But we don't know what's happening with this, but we will make sure that you have access to the QR code. We want your feedback. We want to make sure that today is helpful, that it's what you needed to see and hear. And the live stream will now end.